Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you, Stuart. Welcome members, honorary aldermen, officers and any members of the public viewing at home to this evening's council meeting. Members, you will see that we've opened the doors to allow some airflow in the chamber, and you are welcome to wear your masks if you prefer. Given the ongoing need to ensure everyone is safe, I move that the Council Procedure Rule 21.2, requirement to stand, be suspended for this meeting. Do I have a seconder?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm happy to second that proposal.
Is that agreed, members?
Agreed.
Item 1, apologies for absence. Miss Willis, may I please have any apologies for absence?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've received apologies from Councillor Peter Barnett, Councillor Colin Dugan, Councillor Tim Fitzgerald, Councillor David Lewis and Councillor John Skipper. And some of them are joining us virtually, but as you know, they won't be able to vote at this meeting.
Thank you. Item 2, minutes. Moving on to agenda item 2, I propose that the minutes of the meeting of the Council held on 28th of July 2021 be approved as a correct record. Do I have a seconder?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm happy to second that motion.
Is that agreed, members?
Agreed.
Moving on to item 3, report of the returning officer. I would like to invite the returning officer to introduce his report, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is a report of the election of councillor for the Frimley Green ward of the Borough of Surrey Heath. I, Damien Roberts, the returning officer, hereby report that the results of the by-election of a councillor to the Frimley Green ward of the Borough of Surrey Heath, held on the 14th of October 2021, was as follows. Stuart Black, 896 votes. Jacques Olmo, 877, and Christine Eleanor Richards, 76. I can confirm that Stuart Black was duly elected. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Item 4, moving on to my announcements. Firstly, members, you will be aware that Honorary Alderman Derek Franklin recently passed away. Derek served as a borough councillor in Surrey Heath from 1991 to 1999. He was mayor in 1997-98, having been deputy mayor in 1996 and 97, and a chairman of then Finance and Land Committee in 1995-96. You will also have known Derek from his active role in the local voluntary sector, serving as President of the Royal British Legion in Camberley, President of the Frimley and Camberley St John's Ambulance Brigade, and Chairman of the Frimley and Camberley Cadet Corps, amongst other roles. Derek was conferred as an honorary alderman by Surrey Heath Borough Council in 2009. On behalf of the council, I send condolences to his family. Councillors, honorary aldermen and members of the public, I'd like to pay a tribute to Mr. Richard Payne, who was leaving the council at the end of this month. Richard joined the council in January 2005 where his first principal job was to manage the introduction of the new contact centre. He has since managed a number of teams and has undertaken several important roles for the council, including monitoring officer, returning officer, and electoral registration officer. He has been an integral member of the management team in recent years. On behalf of the council, I wish Richard all the very best for the future. Moving on to my other announcements, I am not going to read out the 42 engagements that I've been to, but I have put together my little slideshow presentation. Every single one that I have been to, it has been incredible and a pure joy to meet the fantastic people that we have in our borough, and it is an honour and a privilege. We have such an incredible community out there. And when you become mayor, deputy mayor, you get to see this firsthand. So I hope you enjoy. I will pick out a few as it goes along. I'm afraid it hasn't got any music, so you'll just have to... that might be next one. So I've held a few fundraising events as I've gone through, just some small events which have been ticking along slowly but surely. Some great events raising the Pride flag. Yep, the prehistoric event in the square, which my son loved. I'm sure other children in the borough loved. Another great one, the White Hart. I was invited to try the new menu. Mayor's picnic on the pitch. And who can forget the car show? And a huge £7,900 raised, which is incredible. Some new businesses opened again. This is a team that I think I could have fitted well. Camberley Care, another great organisation that we have in our borough. Beeson, a fantastic organisation. And a pleasure just to go out and meet these people that have held us all together through COVID, and without them we would have struggled. My challenge to the borough to say hello to 5 total strangers. And our first flag raising for the Emergency Services Day in the borough. And who can forget the freedom of the borough? Another fantastic day for us. Is anyone exhausted yet watching this? I came in to see Citizens Advice and met all the trustees as well, which was fantastic, just to say thank you to all their hard work. Business awards, we managed to raise 1,367 for the Hope Hub on the night, so another great achievement. Disability initiative, fantastic through COVID, carried throughout. Met some businesses on Farm Road, opened another takeaway for us. Surrey Heath Age Concern, Walk on the Wild Side, a sponsored walk. We're nearly there. This was great. Miles and Smiles Club that had obviously been shut through COVID, for children that sometimes just need to be with a few people rather than a huge crowd on the school playground. So that was really lovely. And as you can see, I'm trying to get out to all of the wards in the borough. Another great one, the Karina Lodge. Fantastic bunch of residents there, and I got to actually sit in the space where families had been during COVID, that it was behind a screen. Yeah, very powerful to sit and actually be in that space that families would have been in. Another one, Yorktown Post Office. Pradeep and Kay, 43 years running the post office in Yorktown. And Chobham, 100 years old, our lovely Kath. And that is the final one, pre-match lunch at the rugby club, which was lovely. There we go. So I hope you all found that interesting. Okay, moving on to item 5, leaders' announcements. Agenda item 5, I'd like to invite the leader to make his announcements, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm finding it more and more difficult to follow you after your announcements. Yeah. I'd like to begin by adding my condolences to the family of our Honorary Alderman Derek Franklin and the family of Sir David Amos, MP. Both will be sorely missed. I'd like to welcome Rosie Cox and Rachel Bradbury, who've just joined us as graduate trainees. They've joined at a very exciting time, a time of incredible change, and I hope they enjoy their experiences with us. This month we welcome our new Joint Waste Solutions Partnership Director, Kelly Goldsmith. Kelly is employed by Surrey Heath but works with councils across the whole partnership. I'd like to welcome Councillor Black to his first full council meeting. I'm sure you will be a great addition to this council. I'd also like to acknowledge Mr Olmo and Ms Richards for standing for office in Frimley Green. The desire to serve our community is a desire shared by everyone in this building. I'd like to congratulate the Right Honourable Michael Gove MP on being appointed to the top job in local government, and I'm absolutely sure we all wish him the very best in his new role. Finally, I'd like to add my personal thanks to Mr Payne for the outstanding service he's given me, this council and our residents over the last 16 years, and I wish him the very best in the future. Members will recall that a few months ago we made a commitment to support 5 families who had been employed by British Armed Forces in Afghanistan and were now in mortal danger. I'm pleased to confirm that, as well as being one of the first councils in Surrey to come forward with an offer of assistance, we have now achieved our target with all 5 families safely housed in temporary accommodation. Furthermore, some of our families have already found employment and will be moving on to permanent housing. Earlier this year, we agreed to establish a new service to help address street homelessness within the borough. I'm pleased to confirm that building works are well underway for our new emergency accommodation. Thanks to our officers and the Hope Hub, we will be able to provide support to those residents in desperate need before Christmas. Despite the continued national shortage of HGV drivers that has impacted on everything, including fuel supplies and even stocks in supermarkets, we've managed to keep the vast majority of council services running without interruption. This includes our waste and recycling collections, street cleaning, grounds maintenance and community transport services. Last week, we were also able to complete a final collection of garden waste bins this year. We hope that the national supply of HGV drivers will be addressed over the coming months and that we will be in a position to relaunch that garden waste service in the spring. I'm pleased to report that we will be bringing forward to the next executive an updated council tax support scheme. Following valuable input from our cross-party community support working group, our approach is to provide additional assistance and give a greater priority to some of the most vulnerable groups in our community. While we're on the topic of council tax, I'm pleased to update members on the latest figures published by the government that places Surrey Heath Borough Council as 4th in the country for its performance with council tax collection and 7th highest nationally for business rates collection. That's out of 320 boroughs and districts in England and Wales. So a huge thank you to our residents, businesses and officers who've all contributed to that success. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Moving on to item 6, declaration of interest. Do any members have any disclosable pecuniary or non-pecuniary interests to declare in relation to the matters which are to be considered at this meeting? Yeah. Councillor Allaway.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Item 10, the motion. I'd just like to declare that I'm employed by a certification body as a consultant and certified auditor for systems.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to move that the minutes of the executive of the 20th of July, the 17th of August and the 19th of October 2021 be received and the recommendations approved.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to second the executive minutes for the 20th of July, 17th of August, 9th of September and 19th of October.
Are you happy to receive these minutes and to agree the recommendations? Agreed. Planning Applications Committee. Can I have a proposer for the Planning Application Committee minutes?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I wish to present the minutes of the Planning Applications Committee dated 12th of August and 23rd of September for your approval. Thank you.
Do you have a seconder?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to second those minutes.
Thank you, Councillor Wheeler. Members, are you happy to receive these minutes? Yes. Audit and Standards Committee. Can I have a proposer for the Audit and Standards minutes?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to propose the minutes of the Audit and Standards Committee on the 4th of August 2021.
Thank you, Councillor Betton. Do you have a seconder? Members, are you happy to receive these minutes? Yeah. Joint Staff Consultative Group. Can I have a proposer for the notes of the Joint Staff Consultative Group, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to propose that the minutes of the Joint Staff Consultative Group of the 22nd of July and the 23rd of September 2021 be accepted.
Thank you, Councillor Tapper. Do you have a seconder?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm pleased to second those minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. Members, are you happy to receive these notes? Agreed. Employment Committee. Can I have a proposer for the Employment Committee minutes from the 27th of July and the 7th of October 2021, please?
In the absence of Councillor Dugan, I would like to propose those minutes.
Thank you, Councillor Betton. Do we have a seconder?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to second those minutes.
Thank you. Partnership Select Committee minutes, please.
Thank you. I think licensing first.
Oh yeah, sorry, I jumped the gun. I do apologise. So we're doing external partnerships, yeah. I've got this.
Just finish external
Yeah, okay. Right.
So you're still on external partnerships?
Yeah, I've got on here, right. Okay, so we're doing external partnerships.
Yes.
I do apologise, we've got different bits here. So, external partnerships select committee minutes, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to propose the External Partnerships Committee of the 7th of September 2021. Thank you.
And we need the 1st of June. No? Okay. Do we have a seconder?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to second those minutes.
Thank you, Councillor Rise. Members, are you happy to receive these minutes? Agreed. Yeah. On to Licensing Committee. Members, I'm advised that the minutes of the Licensing Committee meeting last week are in the process of being reviewed and will therefore not be presented this evening. Can I have a proposer for the Licensing Committee minutes from the 29th of July 2021, please?
Madam Mayor, I'm delighted to propose that for you.
Thank you, Councillor Bates. And do we have a seconder?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm happy to second those minutes.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Members, are you happy to receive these minutes? Thank you. Performance and Finance Scrutiny Committee. Can I have a proposer for the Performance and Finance Scrutiny Committee minutes?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to propose the Performance and Finance Scrutiny Committee meeting minutes of the 8th of September 2021.
And do you have a seconder?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm happy to second those minutes.
Thank you, Councillor White. Members, are we happy to receive these minutes?
Agreed.
Item 10, motions. I would like to ask Councillor Cliff Betton to move his motion and indicate if he wishes to reserve his right to speak.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I would like to promote the motion and I do reserve my right to speak.
Thank you, Councillor Betton. Do you have a seconder? Sorry, Councillor Allaway.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I also would like to reserve my right to speak as well as seconder.
Thank you, Councillor Allaway. I'd like to invite members to discuss the motion and make any comments. Councillor Cliff Betton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillors, ladies and gentlemen, officers, anyone who happens to be watching online, I ask that this motion I have submitted be approved for the good of the council and the benefit of taxpayers, be the individual households or the businesses that increasingly are the main source of funding for local government. I have, as you are aware, made mention of ISO standards on occasion over the past 2 years, and on each occasion I have seen Heads nodding in agreement from those who have experience of the usefulness of such systems, and the pain looks on other faces with silent screams words such as bureaucracy and cost and unnecessary red tape wafting silently across the room in my direction. And it's to those people that I'm primarily speaking now, because you are fundamentally wrong in your instinctive assumptions. Councillor Allaway, who is seconding the motion, and who has been a user, an implementer, and a certifier, will elaborate on the details. I'm going to talk about the benefits. When I sent the motion to the Chief Executive for inclusion in tonight's agenda, I also submitted a background paper, which I'd hoped would be accompanied in the pack that we get, but apparently that is not policy. So I have sent everyone on the council's mailing list a copy. And I suspect that those in favour of the idea might have looked at those pages, and the people that I'm primarily addressing now may not have done. In that case, then you've only got yourself to blame for the length of this proposal statement as I address some of your perceived concerns. ISO 9001 is not a financial burden on organisations. If commercial companies of international scale, such as Unilever and BP, and local companies such as Still, and yes, I will say it, my own, have ISO 9001 certification, then it is not because they want added costs and restraints on their businesses. It is because it works and actually saves money. My own company operates ISO 9001 and is invaluable. And yes, there are costs. I put my money where my mouth is. We pay £1,500 a year for each office that we have, both here in Camberley and in Hong Kong. And that covers both of our offices, and there are no other costs apart from the internal audit costs, but we do those things anyway, and so does the council. ISO 9001 gives a focus to the management process by making things open and transparent and removes internal walls within organisations. Ah, I hear you cry. What about data protection and confidentiality? That may be okay for business, but it is not appropriate where sensitive information is concerned, which is true. But organisations such as Oxford University, medical research departments, a bit of sensitive information there perhaps. Local government, Durham City Council, Nottingham City Council, Hampshire County Council's economy, transport and environmental departments, Boston Borough Council, all have ISO 9001. Are we less able to cope than they are? Are they more forward-thinking and more commercially aware than Surrey Heath? And then there are the collaborations to consider. We share waste management, Meals on Wheels. I know it's not a PC term, but I'm not a PC person. We have even shared officers' functions in the past. How can ISO 9001 work in those situations? Well, the Central Building Control Partnership, a consortium of 6 local government institutions, Lichfield District, Tamworth Borough, South Staffordshire District, South Derbyshire District, Nuneaton and Bedworth Borough, and North Warwickshire, has, working together, operating to ISO 9001. Are they capable of things that Surrey Heath is not able to achieve? I think not. Since I became chair of the Audit and Standards Committee in April 2020, just at the start of lockdown, and in my time as chair, I've learned 2 things. Firstly, that we have an excellent, high-quality audit team that are doing the best job that they possibly can. And secondly, that the council is poor on process management and relies heavily on the experience and expertise of individuals. The problem is, what happens if an individual is ill, or leaves, or heaven forbid is struck down by the proverbial bus? What if circumstances such as COVID require a redistribution of resources? Well, I can tell you at least 2 things and some significance that have happened. In my time as chair of Audit and Standards, this council has had not 1, not even 2, but 4 Section 151 officers, plus 1 member of staff who's filled in this statutory role on 3 occasions during that time. And finally, there will be a fifth who will be taking up post at the turn of the year. And we will finally have another permanent director of finance section 151 officer. This merry-go-round of section 115 officers relying on individuals' knowledge and experience to do the job does not promote continuity. And because of a lack of any standard process, things do not get passed on or dealt with as they should. Does it matter? Well, yes, it does. A document from the external auditors sent to the first incumbent of the job, who left a few months after I took over, I don't take it personally. The document sat somewhere in the council for 6 months before the fourth Section 115 officer contacted the auditors asking for this vital piece of information, only to be told that they sent it 6 months ago and were still waiting for a response from the council. With a proper quality management system, that could not have happened. And then at the last full meeting of the council, I brought up the case of a resident who in April 2019 had been recommended disability assistance in their property to enable them to access their home in a wheelchair. Then along came the May elections, followed by COVID. It was a mix of responsibilities between borough and county, and as a result, a disabled person was confined as a prisoner in their own home for over 2 years. When it was identified, the issue was swiftly fixed. It was a failure of systems and process, not of the will or the ability to get the work done. That, again, could not have happened had a transparent, risk-based quality management system been in place. It is not acceptable, and it will keep on happening unless we do something about it. Since the last Borough Council election in 2019, we've had a new chief executive. We are having a revised management structure, and we'll have a new senior management team. Adoption of and operation to ISO 9001 of a quality management system will complete the revision of the management structure of Surrey Heath Borough Council, improve efficiency of services both internally and externally. We must give the chief executive the tools needed to do the job we have asked him to do. For that is what ISO 9001 is. It's a tool, prepared and documented by those most qualified to do so, the users, the staff and their managers, those who do the job. They write it. It's not an imposition. It's a framework designed to help and clarify, not to dictate, and it works. In business, in academia, and in local government. It facilitates learning across an organisation, and being risk-based system, it increases scrutiny of decisions and prevents decisions being taken in isolation and without proper process. And we've seen where that can lead. It saves money by driving down operating costs significantly, reduces errors, and can have significant reductions on insurance costs. I urge you to support the motion. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Betton. Councillor Allaway.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Members, I have seconded the proposal as I believe there are benefits to be had from adopting the practices within ISO 9001. I have worked on both sides of the fence, so to speak, with some 30 years' experience in managing the 9001 system in the energy industry, then latterly as a consultant and certification body auditor. ISO 9001 is a quality management system that can be applied in any organisation to achieve high levels of customer satisfaction repeatedly and sustainably. Quality management systems started off in the UK defence industry with the AQAP procedures, Allied Quality Assurance procedures. These were implemented to improve the quality and reliability of armaments. Nothing more annoying when you have the enemy engaged and the gun jams. The commercial sector version BS 5750 was developed to bring the same quality and reliability to UK manufacturing and was predominantly a manufacturing standard. The standard evolved into ISO 9001 as a generic quality management system for any business application, be it manufacturing or service-based. I'm aware that our building services have to be certified to offer the service, and IT are or have been certified in the recent past. I always assure new clients when delivering consultancy that the standard isn't about imposing a level of peripheral bureaucracy onto an organisation. It's about taking the good practices in place and enhancing them into a structure designed to deliver continual improvement in product or service to its clients. There is merit in adopting the practices of 9001 into the Council, even if certification registration is not pursued. Not only enhancing the Council processes, but defining them clearly for councillors as a significant party in the Surrey Heath organisation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Allaway. I'll have Councillor Sean Garrett.
Just want to check, am I able to talk on this? I'm allowed to speak on this? Yeah. Okay, sorry. Thought I jumped in then. Sorry, I apologise. Thank you, Madam Mayor. As someone who runs a small company and has ISO 9001, I have my own views on this. I believe that within the manufacturing industry and such businesses, ISO 9001 has its place. I was not at the company when it was instigated, but have been responsible for the annual audits for the last 5 years. There is a lot of work involved around the audits and checking the systems that are in place, but apart from that, it can be quite painless. However, only this week I received an incorrect delivery from a supplier for the 3rd time in as many orders. That supplier has ISO 9001. Whilst this is my own personal experience, I'm happy to take on board others and their comments. What I would like to highlight is that the Performance and Finance Scrutiny meeting on the 17th of March this year, which Councillor Betton took part in, the subject of ISO 9001 was discussed at length, and I quote from the minutes. Surrey Heath's building control function was currently working towards ISO 9001 accreditation. Whilst there were no plans to pursue ISO 9001 accreditation for other council functions, there were a number of projects and targets outlined in the draft annual plan for 21-22, which focused on improvement and aligned with the standards quality management principles. With this in mind, it was proposed that a self-assessment of the council's performance against a local government assessment tool for integral quality management, which was contained in ISO 18091 standard. The outcomes of this work would then be used to inform the review of performance management 21-22. The committee noted the update. I totally agree with this. This is something we should investigate, which is why I voted as such at the P&F on the 17th of March. Based on that vote, Surrey Heath Borough Council have already committed to looking into various aspects of ISO 9001 and ISO 18091. We do not want officers spending more time and money writing another report, and I would urge Councillor Betton to withdraw this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Garrett. Councillor Malfakenham.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do remember the PNF meeting, which it was brought up, and I always have had a view on ISO 9001. Some of you may know I have been in industry for decades, or a few years, to say the least. In my stint out there, I worked with an engineering company, telecoms in particular. It involves a process, it involves services. We instituted ISO 9001, and for my sins, I was the project lead on it because I was the CFO in that company. What we found after the process was that it did truly work because we were able to ensure the process worked and our services to our customers improved impeccably well. I mean, it truly was fantastic. Very proud to have instituted it. I sincerely believe what Councillor Betton has proposed is the best way forward for this, our council, because as we all know, the future is going to change. And if we have a certification like ISO 9001, we have a better chance of marrying our services with other councils to make sure we get the best partner. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Malvagnam. Any other speakers? Councillor Brooks?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's too long ago when I was involved in ISO 9001. It was probably about 30 odd years or something. Well, there was a previous version, the 56, whatever it's called, when I had printing businesses. That was a long time ago. In those days, it became very important to have something of that ilk as a kite mark to actually be able to do business with other people. That is not the case here. I think from what's been said, it appears to me that there has been quite a lot of work already done on making sure these accreditations are in place. I'm not sure what they are. And I would like to add in here something along the lines that the Chief Exec would be tasked with actually looking at all these other boroughs and those that have used it already to see, in fact, what their views are, how it's gone, so we can actually have a little stage in between. Because I think it sounds, I mean, Councillor Betton, you did a brilliant speak, I have to say. I would sign up tomorrow if it was my money. But I think we need to actually look at it a bit further, in a bit more depth first, and to find out where there are experiences and to learn from those too. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brooks. Leader, Councillor McClafferty.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I agree with Councillor Brooks, and that was a well laid out argument for ISO 9000, Councillor Benton. I think of myself as reasonably well informed when it comes to ISO 9000. I've ran a couple of companies, or a number of companies with it, and I've implemented it in 2 of them. And to be honest, I've had a similar experience to Councillor Malvagnam. It's been an absolute positive for the company. I believe it's a very useful tool in the right circumstances, but I'm not sure about its efficacy in a local authority. I think that's partly demonstrated by the fact that after 30 years, not a single local authority has adopted it across the board. And as you've laid out, there were a number of boroughs and districts that have actually adopted it, but usually just for single services or 1 or 2 services. I was one of the councillors that read all of the papers, including the one you sent out separately. So I didn't need the long version of the introduction. And I'm sure it's not directly responsible, but I bring this up for a reason. You included Nottingham City Council as a leading example of having certified an ISO 9000, and they did so in 2019. But a quick search shows that they were put into special measures by the government in 2020 as they were just about to declare bankruptcy. So it's not, it shouldn't be put forward as a be-all and end-all. It's going to answer all of our questions and suddenly turn our customer service into something fantastic. Having said all of that, I'm willing to be persuaded, particularly as the Building Control Service has already submitted for ISO 9000, which I believe is part of a national programme. But I would join Councillor Garrett in asking you to withdraw this motion, because from having read the minutes of the PNF are looking at what appears to be a more appropriate report on ISO 18091, which is a way of local authorities implementing ISO 9000 in an appropriate manner to them. The timing of your motion is that we're at the end of October. You're giving the Chief Exec 6 weeks, effectively, to write a report on ISO 9000 and how it would be. Whereas the PNF, an excellent committee, if I may say so, is looking at this and giving the officers time to do exactly what Councillor Brooks is suggesting, which we look at other boroughs and districts who've done this and get their feedback and look at it in a timely manner, because even if it's not labour intensive, as you've suggested, and there are various thoughts on that, it is a complicated thing to put in well, and I don't think 6 weeks is an appropriate amount of time for a chief exec to have a look at this and bring back a paper. And I would just say I'm not sure why the motion has come forward when P&F are actually looking at it now as we speak, and the officers are working on it. So again, I would ask very, very politely if Councillor Betton would consider withdrawing it in order to let P&F do their job. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McClafferty. Councillor Bates.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I wasn't actually, believe it or not, intending to speak on this matter, very rarely for me. I'm just going to explain why. If I was, and I mentioned this actually to my community group colleagues on Monday, if I was to walk through the streets of Old Dean and walk through the shopping parade and they say to me, Rodney, what about this council? And I say, well, what do you want to see in the council? They don't say to me that they want to see ISO 9001, 18001 or anything else. But what they do want to see is improvements to the council for various reasons. I'm sure Councillor Garrett gets the same kind of remarks. So I guess when I came tonight, it's not something that I am overly enthusiastic or knowledgeable on in any way, shape or form. But in terms of council processes and issues that have occurred during this council over the last 2 years, I could list them at length, all the various issues that we've had regarding processes, many of which we can't go into in a public forum, but they have been a major issue for some considerable time and have cost this council a lot of money. And I must admit, I get fed up, whether it's this council or some other organisation, with the comment that, oh, well, so-and-so has left the council, so we don't have a record of what they're doing. That is simply not good enough. It doesn't matter if it's this council or some other organisation, that the resident loses out as a result of that. So I think the wider point is certainly one that is worth looking at. I have to say, I am sympathetic with the argument about whether it should be a 6-week report, because I think that is quite tight. But I also just wanted to comment on this P&F minutes, that we suddenly have an interest in the minutes of these meetings. So I'm going to read to you what the actual minutes say, and then the chairman is here, and then he can perhaps confirm whether my understanding is correct or whether what's just been read out by the leader of the council is correct. Because the minutes, according to the meeting, say the following. Whilst there were no plans to pursue ISO 9001 accreditation for other council functions, there were a number of projects and targets outlined in the draft annual plan for 21-22, which focused on improvement and alignment with the standards quality management principles. With this in mind, it was proposed, I don't know who that was, but I'm going to carry on speaking even without that interruption. With this in mind, it is proposed a self-assessment of the council's performance against the local government assessment tool for integral quality management, which was contained in the ISO 18091 standard. The outcomes of this work would then be used to inform the review of performance management in 2021-22. So I have not got from this that P&F are actually going to do anything at all. That's not my understanding of what happened, and maybe the chairman can correct me as a point of information whether I'm correct. I'm not sure if I was at that meeting or not. I think I probably was, actually. But certainly that doesn't appear to have been that they were agreeing to do anything whatsoever. So my own view, for what it's worth, is that I would perhaps encourage the proposer to, rather than perhaps this 6 weeks bring it back to full council, he is the chairman of the audit committee. I think this report should go to him and that committee, quite honestly, and actually we do look at it in a bit more detail. So I'm not going to formally propose that as an amendment because I think it's his motion, he needs to decide whether he wants to do with it, but that would be my sympathy, because in that way we can then look at this in more detail and be sure it will be looked at in detail rather than in a vague report discussed in a meeting 6 or 7 months ago where no actual action appears to have been appointed or agreed despite what we heard earlier on. So that's kind of my informal suggestion. Sorry, proposer, you're getting several suggestions about what to do with the motion. I will leave you to decide what to do with it.
Thank you, Councillor Bates. Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you. Bizarrely, I wasn't going to speak on this one either, being a small company currently going through their ISO accreditation and finding it quite painful, but also being painfully aware of how my processes, as they stand at the moment, very much sit in the individual managers' heads and aren't documented correctly and therefore are not fully auditable. And therefore, should something happen to one of us, be it bus or COVID, I do feel that the future of the company may well be in jeopardy. I'm sympathetic to everything that has been said here, and actually I will go so far as to propose an amendment, and that is that where it says the chief exec here, point 2.2, I have nothing at all with the other ones, but 2.2, that the chief executive, blah, blah, for the 15th of December 2021, that be amended to the chief executive be asked to review the findings and the outcome of the Performance and Finance Committee with a further review as to how applicable the standards of the ISO 9001 are and could be applied to each service independently, and a full report to be brought back to the first full council meeting in 2022. So that's my proposed amendment. I'm sorry, it's difficult to talk in here with masks, so I don't know how the proposer and the seconder feel about it. I think it is evident, and has been evident for the entire time that I have been a councillor, that we rely very heavily on individuals within this council. And I think that by having clearly auditable processes that are there and are available for every member and every member of our wider community to actually see cannot help to bring greater clarity and transparency to the way in which we operate this council. Thank you.
Councillor Wheeler, do you have a seconder on your amendment?
Councillor Hawkins.
Yep.
There wasn't.
No, it wasn't an amendment. No. Are you seconding that?
Madam yeah, I'm quite happy to second the motion, the proposal, the amendment, because Councillor Wheeler is absolutely right. I mean, but I think first and foremost, what we need to do is the chief executive, within a timescale. Now, he knows his diary, he knows the workload and everything else, so I'm not going to set arbitrary dates. It has to come back and say whether or not it's reasonable or otherwise. You know, the staff are busy, they're very busy on everything, and I think to put a date at this stage on them. But what I do think we should have is, it comes back, we have working groups for the purpose of examining and bringing forward and looking at detail, and it should come back. Now, whether it is to the P&F or audit and standards, maybe it's audit and standards, because it crosses over that we should have a greater investigation. We can look at it. That is the purpose of the scrutiny committees. It should scrutinise, it should then bring back a report. And that is what we should be looking at. We should not be agreeing policy on the hoof. We should be looking at scrutinising and bringing forward reports. And therefore, I certainly, I'm not going to speak any more on this. I didn't intend to, but I'll join the not speaking gang. But I'm happy if Councillor Wheeler is content for me to support her proposal. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
So you're seconding that amendment?
Yes.
Thank you.
That was the short version, yes.
Councillor Betton, would you accept that amendment? Would you like to hear that amendment again?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think that's eminently sensible.
Councillor Wheeler, would you be prepared to read that amendment out again?
A little bit slower.
Just, yeah, could you just do that slowly so we can all just digest and...
As I said, having not intended to speak, I hadn't actually written anything down prior to the meeting. So I'll take my mask off and keep my head down. So I am accepting everything in it apart from point II, which is that the CEO, and I'm just going to change it very slightly to reflect the point that Councillor Hawkins made, which I hope will mean then that it will be universally acceptable to the Chamber. So amend to the CEO be asked to review the findings of the Performance and Finance Committee and further review how applicable the standards of ISO 9001 are and could be applied to each service function, and a full report to be presented. I had said in January 2021, or the first one in 2002, but if we say by the end of the first quarter, which I think gives hopefully the Chief Executive more than enough time, and actually gives a defined date by which this has to be done. So are you still happy to amend it with that, Councillor Hawkins, just so that we're absolutely clear? And I think it just brings that in as well. Was that slow enough? If not, I have got it scribbled on a bit of paper, and thank you.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, can I come in? Councillor Wheeler, in not getting her notes together, did miss out my point about it to come firstly to a suitable scrutiny committee for scrutiny and then coming on to the full council thereafter. Is that acceptable? Yeah. Somebody can cobble that together. Good luck to them.
Councillor Betton, you happy to accept that amendment?
Absolutely.
This is, so
Okay, Chambers. So this is now the actual motion. Are we happy with this amendment and to vote on this? We just went through that.
overruling.
Councillor Deitch, we just actually went through that amendment and seconded.
You didn't. You just cobbled it together. I want it read out as it was, please. As the Chief Executive has just written it down.
You can overrule him. Overruled.
Yeah.
You want me to vote on it, that is? Come on, take it.
Can it be read out?
Can it be read out, please? Please help. Can that be helped?
Okay, so amend to the Chief Executive be asked to review the findings of the Performance and Finance Committee and to review how applicable the standards of the ISO 9001 are and could be applied to each service function. For this to be reviewed by a suitable scrutiny committee, be that Performance and Finance or Audit and Standards, and that a full report then be brought back to full council within the first quarter of 2022.
Councillor Deitch, are you happy with that? Thank you.
Put it to the vote.
Okay, are we happy to now put this to a vote?
Agreed.
Yes? So is that agreed then?
No, those in favour.
Please raise your...
Those in favour.
Yeah, all in favour, please raise your hand.
The motion is carried.
Motion is carried. Thank you, everybody. Oh, sorry.
It's the new substantive motion.
The new substantive motion. Agreed? Okay, we move on to item 11. Review of political proportionality. I'd like to invite the leader to introduce the report and move a motion in respect of this item.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that the revised scheme of proportionality as set out at Annex A to the report be adopted for the remainder of 2021-22 and the revised membership of the committees as circulated after the publication of the agenda is agreed.
Thank you, Leader. Do you have a seconder?
Madam Mayor, I'm very happy to second that.
Thank you. Do we have any comments, members? No? Okay. Is that agreed, members?
Agreed.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to item 12, 5-year strategy 2022 to 2027. I'd like to invite the leader to introduce the 5-year strategy report, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Members, I'm firstly pleased to report that the consultation with our residents, businesses, charities, members and partners was more comprehensive and wide-ranging than we have ever achieved before when consulting on a plan. Using every method of modern communication, including Facebook and Instagram, through to more traditional face-to-face meetings and paper forms. Of course, it did not reach everyone, and it didn't reach every group, and we're working on how to improve that going forward. But the numbers of people and organisations providing their feedback is significantly higher than before. That feedback naturally contained wide-ranging and often conflicting priorities. However, there were some very loud and clear messages. The borough is quite rightly considered to be safe in the main, but keeping it that way must remain a priority. Green issues, from reducing our carbon footprint to preserving our green and open spaces, was a very high priority, as was supporting the more vulnerable in our community. This strategy, if adopted, sets out ambitious but achievable targets that are mostly measurable and quantifiable, enabling this chamber to track progress or not, and to make sure that we deliver for our residents. I'm pleased to see a commitment to reduce the Council's carbon footprint by 70% by 2027, meaning we will be on track to be carbon neutral by 2030. Also of note is the widely supported target of this Council building a number of socially rented houses over the term of the plan. It's clear there is a desperate need for this type of housing within the borough, and that is not being met by developers. As well as the expected sections of environment, health and quality of life, economy and council effectiveness, there is an important new section on advocacy, where we commit to lobby for and influence other organisations and people who can bring in changes that are important to and will benefit our residents. I'd ask members to note that there are 2 amended targets agreed by the Executive recently, which are page 64 of the Council Agenda Pack, net zero carbon emissions and resilient to the impacts of climate change. That action has now become deliver actions that encourage and support steps being taken by local people within the community to tackle climate change. And page 76 of the Council Agenda Pack, aspirations for our community, the issue ensuring that the bus services across the whole borough are efficient, sustainable, and we have added the words, and deliver a sufficient service to the community to reduce a reduction in car usage. To support a reduction in car usage. Please note, members, that an omission of a specific target within the plan must not be read as it being unimportant or no action will be taken. It is simply that the document must be a working document and each target breaks down into dozens of actions in each of the 5 annual plans. Finally, I believe this strategy delivers what the vast majority of our residents want and expect from their council. I move that this council resolves to adopt the new 5-year strategy and any final amendments to the content be delegated to the Chief Executive in consultation with the Leader. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor McLafferty. Do you have a seconder?
Madam Mayor, I'm very happy to second that motion.
Are there any comments, members? Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to firstly say a huge thank you to the residents of the 2 villages that I represent. They're split out in the report, whereas others are based on a ward basis. And the residents that myself, Councillor Tedder and Councillor McGrath represent contributed 137 responses. And I do want to formally raise my disappointment in some of the way in which these responses have been reported. I am pleased that we went out. I'm pleased that we went out in the way in which we went out. I have asked several times now for councillors to see a copy of all comments received, because like everything else, I think we are at risk of being open to interpretation. Levels of development as the 4th biggest issue raised by respondents, saying it was very important. I've got no idea whether that's residents in favour of extensive development within the borough, or whether it's actually residents that are raising concerns about the fact that it was very important that development happened in the right way and in the right place. And I think that links very closely to the second requirement or second priority of our residents, which is access to well-maintained open parks and open spaces, because certainly our environment in the countryside is something that is very important to all of the residents within this borough. For many, it's the reason that we choose to live here and remain here. So I would like to reiterate again for the publication fees in a timely manner, because it's now several weeks since we've finished this consultation, and yet as members we still have not seen all of the comments that were raised by residents. And I said, and secondly, to thank my residents in particular for engaging so well and in such numbers in this very important consultation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wheeler. Did I see more hands? Councillor Tapper.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, it's admirable that this council has put together a 5-year strategy, but it will be judged by how well it puts it into practice. We've just come back from a short break to the lovely seaside town in Dorset of Lyme Regis. Whilst there, we discovered that not one single town centre car park has an electric vehicle charger. Now, Surrey Heath is at least one up on that. The main square car park does have EV chargers. So I did look at Lyme Regis Town Council's website to see that in 2019 they declared a climate emergency, just like we did. And in 2019 they expressed the aspiration of installing electric vehicle chargers in their town centre car parks. Now, over 2 years later, absolutely nothing has been happened. If we are to make this something that our residents will see as a worthwhile plan for the future for this borough, we must not leave ourselves in that situation. We must deliver on what we have promised to do, and we will be judged by whether we do so or not. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Tapper. Councillor Bates.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Firstly, I should say I know Lyme Regis extremely well because I regularly visit it on a number of occasions during the year because a very good friend of mine lives there who is involved in the Carnival Committee. And therefore, I do know a bit about Lyme Regis Council, and I think it's fair to say that it's not as good as this council in a number of different regards. But the point that Councillor Tapper makes is a good one regarding how do we monitor this going forward, because there are a number of really good things in this strategy, but they will mean nothing if we don't actually get on and do them. So I suppose that then leads to ensuring that not only the executive, but the scrutiny committees do regularly monitor this, do regularly make sure that these actions are undertaken, and I'm sure that all of us will play our own part in doing that as well.
Thank you, Councillor Bates. Councillor Malvagnam.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I must actually congratulate the officers, the Chief Executive and the officers for putting together this 5-year plan. It's been a long task, and it's been put together. I do take Councillor Wheeler's point on the items which I know Councillor Wheeler has been going on about. Maybe that should be looked at. Only thing I can ask the officers, and particularly the councillors here, this should not become a wish list. It must be followed through, and we have to keep monitoring it, rightly so, like Councillor Bates said. It has to be monitored year on year to see whether we have achieved anything, because it's all the hours spent by the CEO and the officers should not go to waste. That's for the administration, council administration, to make sure that's actually within our way of scrutiny. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Malvagnam. Councillor Brooks.
Thank you. Just on another front, and taking on board what the leader has said about the detail, and there's a lot of stuff in there which you can drill down and be a lot more. I don't think we should lose the focus as a council on continuing to build our reserves, which enable us to deliver a lot of the facilities for our residents that we want to deliver. And so we shouldn't miss any opportunities, both within the borough and neighbouring areas, for good investments. I think that's very important to focus on, because there's no doubt we have built a good reserve over many, many years, and that enables us to deliver what we need to do to offer a good service for the residents and the facilities. So I think that's particularly important, and also to maximise the returns from our current investments, of which there are quite a few. And that takes quite a lot of hard work and due diligence, and we should make sure there's resource doing that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brooks. Any other comments? Councillor McClafferty.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just grouping them together, Councillor Malvagnam, Councillor Bates and Councillor Tapper, fundamentally, delivery is what it's all about, isn't it? This council has, over the years, had lots and lots of plans. It has a mixed result of delivery. I think in the main it's good. I think we're a good council and we do deliver. But clearly we can do more and we can do better. I think this executive is driven to focus on delivery, and I know that in my meetings with Mr. Roberts, the Chief Exec, probably delivery is the word that comes up the most, and the new management team that has been recruited, it's been made absolutely clear to them that this is a council that wants delivery. I believe this plan actually is a tremendous foundation for doing exactly that. Councillor Brooks, I think your point about reserves and investments is well made, and it's something we should continue to do, and that's noted. And Councillor Wheeler, I wouldn't say you've been going on about it for a while, but you have quite rightly brought up the fact that the raw comments, the actual raw data, you've requested it several times. I have been stalling you, giving the officers time to go through all of those thousands of comments. They have had to pull out comments that have named officers, they have named councillors, and you can determine who the actual commenter was by some of the comments. But that process is virtually finished, and that will be published no later than this Friday. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McClafferty. I think, obviously, after all our comments, the reason we have all the working groups is that we look into everything and it is down to us to make sure we do get this delivered and that we look after our residents and we do what we say. So I think with all the groups that we've now got in place, we're in a great starting place to move this 5-year plan forward. Members, are you happy to agree the proposal? Agreed. Do we need to vote?
Well, I think you just kind of had a vote there, but...
Sorry.
Yeah. How about show of hands? Just
Show of hands, everybody? Yeah, thank you. Is that okay? Yeah.
Fine.
I think this meeting's going a little bit, yeah. Okay, item 13, governance working groups. Agenda item 13, I'd like to invite the leader to introduce the report of the governance working group and to move the recommendations therein. Back to you, Councillor McClafferty.
Just for a change. Thank you, Madam Mayor. The cross-party governance working group's recommendations fall into basically 3 categories. Ensuring the input from members on decisions regarding planning appeals, where the appeal may undermine the decision made by the Planning Application Committee. Improving the contract standing orders, which will strengthen the financial management of capital projects, and administrative changes needed to reflect the new corporate management team's responsibilities going forward. I therefore move the recommendation that the Council resolves that the scheme of delegation of functions to officers at Part 3, Section B of the Constitution be updated to include the delegations as set out in the paper. 2, the financial regulations at Part 4, Section H of the Constitution be updated as set out Annex A of this report. And 3, contract standing orders at Part 4, Section I of the Constitution be updated as set out at Annex B of this report. Thank you, Ma'am.
Thank you, Leader. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor McClellan. Sorry, I was going to say Malvagenen.
It's hard to tell us apart.
Do we have any comments, members? Is that agreed, members? Agreed. Thank you. Okay, moving on to item 14, section 151 officer. Agenda item 14, I propose that the recommendations as set out on the agenda paper be adopted. Do I have a seconder?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm happy to second that proposal.
Do any members wish to speak on this item? Is that agreed, members? Agreed. Thank you, members. Moving on to item 15, leaders' question time. I'd now like to invite members to ask questions of the leader, Councillor Alan McClafferty, on issues relating to executive functions. Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First of all, I'd like to congratulate the team on providing this 5-year strategy. I think it's an excellent document. I'd like to ask 2 questions of the leader with some comments. And of the leader, would you like to answer both of them at once or one at a time, please?
I'm not entirely sure I could answer both at the same time. So I'll be happy to have them one at a time, Councillor Chapman.
Okay. Thank you very much. These are within the 5-year strategy. It's about the environment, which I'm really concerned about, and I'm sure most members in this chamber are. And we know and listen to what's going on nationally and globally. I'd like to bring 2 questions to the leader that we could actually action on locally, because I think that's very important. And I'd like to refer, first of all, these are both under the environment, and this is environment, our aim, and it goes under net zero carbon emissions and resilience to impacts of climate change. And it's the third paragraph down on that, which reads, deliver improvements to green infrastructure across the borough, increasing the potential of land, biodiversity, current and future woodland in the borough, and sequester and store carbon, e.g. promoting use of hedgerows. Now, I know quite a bit about hedgerows and trees and carbon monoxide and everything else. The campaign to protect rural England say that hedgerows can help with carbon capture, can also create important habitats for wildlife, and the hedgerows that they actually mention are things like pyracantha, privet, holly, yew, etc. Is quite a list of things that are the best things to do for hedgerows. And particularly by the roadside, capturing stuff coming from vehicles. We know what's happening on all our main roads, but this is a good way forward. So to the leader, I think we see these documents, we look at them and discuss them, but I'm sure a lot of our residents out there in the borough wouldn't know about this, what we're doing. So, leader, is there a chance we could at some time in the future at least put an item in the Heath scene, for instance, an article, and anything else you might think of where we can promote this particular thing with the hedgerows? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chapman. The simple answer is yes. I'm absolutely sure that it's a good idea that we put an article in the next appropriate or next available Heath scene. I think this council has made it clear from its declaration of a climate emergency, which not all boroughs and councils have done, and the, if I remember correctly, 60 plus actions from the Climate Change Working Group, which we adopted unanimously in here. So I think we've made our position clear that as a council, we take it very, very seriously. But you're right, we have more than a responsibility just to get the council to be carbon neutral. We have to work on Surrey Heath. And so a Heath scene article would be a good idea. My understanding is things like there are different trees, I'm kind of looking at Councillor Gallagher, but there's different trees that do better jobs of absorbing carbon than others. And if we can just get people to understand that and plant those kind of trees instead, then we're moving forward, aren't we? So yes, I'm very happy to say we would put that in.
And if I can, Madam Mayor, to the leader, my second question and comments, it's under the heading at the back of that document, aspirations for our community. And second from the bottom paragraph, work with partners to improve air quality and combat air pollution by tackling idling and higher polluting vehicles. Members, I've looked into this and it's something I felt very strongly about, having waited for my grandchildren outside of school, and the number of vehicles that turn up in a rush at the last minute waiting for their child to run out the school gates and get into their car. And I've let it be known to some of these drivers, it's not gone down very well, but with the parents standing outside the school, I've sort of been clapped. I didn't want to be clapped, but I feel very strongly about that, because what you actually see is younger children waiting for the others to come out of school. By the exhaust of these cars, with all the carbon, everything you can think of, all the emissions coming from them. And I know we're looking at, again, nationally, but this is close at heart. This is something we can actually do something about. Now, an idling vehicle produces fumes which contain a number of harmful gases, including carbon dioxide, which is bad for the environment and contributes towards climate change, as well as other harmful things which are linked to asthma and other lung diseases. Now, it is actually against the law to be doing this, and it says you must not leave a vehicle engine running unnecessarily while the vehicle is stationary on a public road. Now, I've also read that 60% of drivers don't actually know that. What I would ask of you, Leader, is that, particularly for schools and what I've just said there are, and again on my research, lots of councils, and these are usually the county council, because it's Surrey County Council that deals with this, have actually now are putting notices up outside of schools. And I would ask that perhaps we could ask Surrey County Council to put notices up saying no idling vehicles, engines, outside of all our Surrey Heath schools. It wouldn't cost that much for them to do it, and just for the health and safety and everything else of our young children, I ask that perhaps we could put that forward, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chapman. Councillor McCrafty?
Thank you, Councillor Chapman. It's obvious you really, really care about this, and I think that a lot of people would have empathy with that in this chamber. I've got absolutely no problem at all about the idea of writing to county and encouraging them to put signs outside the schools. I didn't know that it was, I think you just said it was against the law to have a vehicle idling. I'd go a little bit further and say that we would want to influence the parking wardens to enforce that, not just outside the schools, but anywhere in the borough. And I'll ask Mr. Roberts to action that. And frankly, if there's a hold-up with whether signage is a cost issue for them, then perhaps this borough might even take the view that it'd still be worthwhile doing, and perhaps we would find the funds to do it ourselves. Because I think it would be an excellent idea to put up the signs and once again inform people that not only is it unhealthy of all people, children, but also it helps us achieving our green targets, doesn't it? So thank you very much. I'm happy to.
Councillor Morgan Rise.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just another question on the aspirations for our community from the 5-year strategy, and I just would like an example from the leader of how he intends to achieve the aspiration of improving the borough's rail links to London and other key towns and cities, which has been an ongoing problem for this borough for longer than I've been alive. So I'll be very keen to hear how he intends to achieve this.
I was hoping there would be a question on that. As I said, and I suspect Councillor Rise already knows, that I said in my announcements about the 5-year strategy that it's a new section in a 5-year strategy. We have taken on board, I think, for the first time formally, that we have a duty to lobby and try and influence others who, frankly, they've got control of things and we don't. And it has been a long-standing, as you've just said, it's been a long-standing issue that the rail links from Camberley to London are pretty poor. There have been, I think Councillor Hawkins told me, that it's been going on for many, many years, decades. And I noticed that Councillor Josephine Hawkins believes I was talking about Councillor Edward Hawkins. So they...
Point of order, Madam Mayor. I think those comments are unfair and should be withdrawn.
But the bottom line is that Network Rail have control over that. I think it's something that our residents would very, very much like to see. I think this council understands completely that it would be a huge benefit to the borough. I'm afraid I cannot tell you how I would achieve it. What I can do is commit what's in the plan, which is to ensure that every opportunity we have, we will try and lobby and influence Network Rail or anyone who succeeds them to improve the rail links within Camberley to London.
Councillor Jennings-Evans.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Leader, I'd just like to request, on that basis of being able to lobby those who are in the position to help us, is that we raise the issue of the Arriva buses in our borough, and that we ask county to obviously work their hardest in trying to resolve the issue and find an alternative supplier so that there is no reduction in service to our residents.
Thank you, Councillor Jennings-Evans. Yeah, your question is not, can I get them reinstated? Your question is, can I lobby on behalf of the council for them to be replaced, either with Arriva, who run them, or with county, who I believe subsidise the routes. I'm very happy to do that. I think the two routes that are due to be cancelled, is it 34
and 35.
I guess on the one hand, Arriva stroke county are saying there's not enough people using them. On the other hand, the people who do use them find them very, very important links into town. So I'm more than happy to lobby on behalf of those residents to try and get that improved, if not reversed.
Actually,
Councillor Wheeler?
thank you. On the same point, at a recent local area committee, which for some reason a number of councillors that should have been there weren't there, the route of 34 and 35 was actually brought up, and they are looking to enhance the bus stops that are served by route 34 and 35. And I raised a query on the basis that they are looking to prevent parking in a wider parking area related to those particular bus services. And I was given assurance in that committee, which we could, had the recording worked, we could all have listened back to, but it didn't, so we can't. And I was told that the county were looking to extend the service to run later, if not 24/7. And therefore my concern about the parking being restricted after 9 o'clock wasn't a valid one, because they were looking to extend the bus timetable. So I'm surprised to hear that they are suspending or reducing those services, given that they are just about to invest money in improving the parking arrangements and the bus stops concerned. So maybe a letter quickly would be timely to prevent county and presumably by extension ourselves wasting money.
Thank you, Councillor Wheeler. It's always the same, isn't it? You can attend 99 out of 100 meetings, and the one that you don't attend is the one that is mentioned. I think it sounds to me, and fingers crossed from what you're saying, it sounds to me like there's perhaps more of a communication issue in terms of, because the latest announcement I had was that they were cancelling those services. But if they're talking about extending them, I'm more than happy to get to the bottom of that and then write appropriately to both Arriva and county. So I'll take into account both of those points.
Thank you, members. Any other questions? Councillor Tedder?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Leader, could you please, following on from Councillor Chapman's remarks, could you possibly ask our planning officers to, when they do pre-applications, to encourage developers to put in hedges instead of brick walls, and to try and encourage developers or anybody building, ripping out hedges, tearing out trees, and encourage them to retain those trees. And perhaps if we were a little stronger on that point, we may retain some of the green in the borough. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tedder. I'm not sure I can instruct, but I can certainly bring it to the attention of the planning officers, the value of hedgerows. I think in many instances we'd rather see hedgerows than fences, hedgerows rather than brick walls. Again, it serves our green agenda, it helps with our carbon footprint, it gives natural habitat for wildlife, etc. And frankly, I think it looks a lot better. So I'm more than happy to bring it to the attention of them. And I will discuss with Mr. Roberts how we may bring it forward into a more formal way that we can be recommending, or even if we get the opportunity, we can enforce it.
Thank you, members. Any more questions? No. I'd just like to say one thing before we conclude the meeting. Anybody whose phone went off, please donate to the Mayor's charity this evening. And that now concludes the meeting. Thank you all.